What's up, everybody? So we're back over here. Behind me I have a 1988 Mustang GT. Car's pretty solid. The owner, however, wants me to install this DECH kit on the car, so we're going to end up pissing a lot of people off because I'm actually going to have to cut all of these GT skirts to make the kit fit. But at the end of the day, it's what the customer wants and what the customer likes. So to make him happy is all that matters. So I know a lot of people ask, how do DECH kits fit? How do they get mounted? Well, typically on an LX car, the kits go right up to the moldings. And because they don't have skirts, it makes it quite easy for the skirts to just butt up against these moldings and gives you that nice look. Now in this case, we're actually going to have to cut all of these skirts about 2 inches below the molding to give us a mounting point to put all the skirts on. So we're going to go over all of that and show you how the kits get mounted. So it's a little unfortunate. Some guys actually do go as far as changing the bumpers and the door moldings over to an LX style first, but that means, you know, you got to find sag-free bumpers to make sure that everything looks good, where we know all of these parts fit, they're true, they're original to the car. Here is an original DECH kit. The kits are actually made out of fiberglass, they're not polyurethane. Polyurethane was kind of coming out a little bit later in time when they first started doing these. So this is from the original DECH molds, and you can see here, finished in gel coat, quite a few layers of glass, so they are pretty rigid, and at the same time do have a little bit of flexibility. Super lightweight, and these things actually fit really, really nice. That's the way that the kits come, and like I said, there'll be a little bit of trimming that we'll have to do. If you look down here where the skirts go in the inner fender, inner wheel wells, we'll do a little bit of trimming down in these areas to make sure that they follow the contours. So we're actually going to start with the side skirts first. Just makes things a little bit easier since the car needs to be mobile, because there's lots of movement happening in the shop today. So I'll start with sort of the easier stuff. So going to go ahead, remove some of the screws for the GT side skirt, and get ready to be able to actually cut this, and actually will give us an opportunity to take a look at the rocker panel and see what type of condition everything else is under there, make sure it's all clean before we put the skirts on, because it is a Canadian car, so there could be a little bit of corrosion, and we obviously don't want to just cover that up. We want to make sure that we tend to any bits of rust or anything else under there and make sure that we can stop it and control it. And so yeah, we'll dig into this. All right guys, so here you can see we got the side skirt mostly pulled off. All of these brackets from factory are notorious for rusting off like this and all the corrosion. Most important thing is that the rocker panel itself is actually quite in good shape, so we don't have much to worry about here. We are going to clean this up a little bit. We'll probably spray something on there just to get a little bit more paint on that material, as the GTs actually, you can see here, looks a little bare. So we get that all cleaned up, but what we really want to do today is just mock up the kit and make sure that everything fits, and that it's in a good position to be able to go ahead and complete the install. So I'm actually just going to kind of hold this skirt up here, and I'm going to start getting into the part that people might not like so much. I'm actually going to go ahead and I am going to cut a section of this skirt off. So just going to get a piece of tape, gonna tape the line out here, and just going to use this cutoff wheel and go across and chop it. What I actually want to do here is I actually want to leave enough material below this molding so that when we put the side skirt on, there'll be enough material to attach it to. So once I get this cut off, I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. One side skirt cut. See behind me, we got the rear bumper cut and the rear quarter panel extensions cut off as well. So what's left of the old bumper cover is on the ground, and the DECH skirt is now somewhat sitting in place. So we're probably just going to find a couple mounting holes in the rear quarter wells, and then just make sure that everything fits good, and just kind of get everything in place. And then move on to the passenger side side skirt, and then we'll get on to the front bumper. All right, so I'm just putting that screw back in. It was out just to be able to move the extension off of the body panel, make it easier to cut. And so that's going to be back in there. You can see we've left a little bit of material here. We'll end up using urethane here later, but again, this is just mock-up. So I'm just going to hold the skirt in place here. Then we're going to drill a hole, we'll put a screw in, just make sure everything fits. Start? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna wrap up for today. It's Friday, it's getting close to the weekend. Got a lot of progress done on the car, at least I would say so for the morning. And we ran into a little problem because we actually had two driver's side skirts, so there was no skirt to test fit on this side. But the rear is test fitted, and got some reused the mounting brackets actually that are used to hold the factory GT skirt. So managed to get some little bolts up in there, so we'll get some fancier hardware when everything gets installed. For paint, driver's side skirt is mocked up, and still need to cut that front bumper off, but other than that, everything is coming along quite nicely. Here's the front bumper and our extra driver's side skirt. Jordan will be bringing a new one along. So here is the 88 GT again, and hopefully this car will look completely different by next week with its new look, and we'll go from there. All right guys, so this is day 2 working on the 88 GT DECH kit conversion, and just working on getting the car up in the air a little bit so I can turn the front wheel and tire, so I can get access to the screws down in the inner fender, and from there remove the front fog lights and license plate and everything that's required to cut this skirt, just like we did the last one in the rear. We're going to cut it right about here all the way around, and that'll allow us to get that DECH front bumper on. Passenger side skirt still needs to go on because I accidentally had two driver's side ones here the other day. So everything on this side is pretty much ready to get that skirt mocked up and mounted on there. Got the fog lights out. There's actually a big bracket that goes from what holds these fog lights in. So these are the actual mounts, but there's a bracket that runs from this side on the underside here, from here all the way over to here, and part of that supports the lower bumper cover. So we're gonna have to just make sure that the bumper cover isn't attached anywhere, which I don't think it is. Doesn't seem like it is, so maybe I'll just go ahead and start getting this cut off, and then we'll see if we can reuse any of this stuff for helping to mount and support the DECH kit. If not, then we'll rip this stuff off. So we got the screws out from the front of the inner fender. So these two lowers, which tie on to the lower part of the fender, ended up loosening off the inner fender liner here, and there's another screw underneath just so that I could get to these bracket supports that live inside here between the front bumper cover and this fender extension. And there's a lot of corrosion. As you can see, there's one nut out of these four. The other three broke and didn't do much better on the other side. So joys of having a car that's been exposed to the elements. But now the front bumper cover is loose off the fender extension. This will give us an opportunity to be able to cut this lower portion off now without having to touch the actual bumper support. All right, so we're just going to take a little cutoff wheel and do just like we did to the rear bumper here, and cut probably about 1.5 to 2 inches down from below the molding, as this is where the DECH skirt is going to butt up against the original bumper cover. Some of you guys are probably going to be upset that I am cutting this factory bumper apart, but at the same time, it is being repurposed. So the VIN sticker is there, it matches the car, so at least everything will stay true to the car. You know, the underside of this is actually damaged quite a bit. Not one of the supporting bolts was actually attached underneath. And yeah, so that is the end of this lower portion and having fog lights in this GT. So let's go ahead and get cutting. A little bit of a struggle getting my arm up underneath into the inner fender well to get this front fender extension off. I noticed there was some corrosion on the bottom side of the actual fender when I was underneath there, so I figured it'd be best just to take these off completely. And you can see here, this is the inner fender, but on the bottom here you can see there's a little bit of corrosion coming up here. So gonna make sure that this gets all cleaned up, and some rust converter on there. We'll get it all clean before we go ahead and do the rest of the DECH mounting. So important point to note is that the LX cars actually have an extension on this side too. So when you're putting the DECH kit on an LX car, you need to take that fender extension off, which is held kind of through these two bolts right here. But similarly, you know, their molding trim has these three mounting holes on the back as well. So yeah, we're just gonna carry on and get the rest of this little fender extension cut. We'll get the rest of this front bumper cover cut and off, and then we'll mock up the front bumper cover, make sure everything is fits the way that it should, make sure we get all this stuff cleaned up, and go from there. So there we are. The front bumper is hacked up, some would say. and the DECH skirt is ready to get fitted and see how we're going to get this all mounted up. Now, one thing that a lot of people always ask me is, how did I make the Stalker front bumper cover on the 1987 Stalker Vert, my black GT convertible? Well, it was actually the same approach. I actually had a Stalker front bumper cover, and I had the factory GT bumper cover that was on the car. I did the same thing. I cut the factory front bumper cover just below that molding all the way around, and I cut the Stalker one right flush where that molding would be, and I molded the two together. So it's kind of a similar approach here. This is obviously way more involved, but the result is worth it at the end of the day. All right, just a light little cleanup of this corner. Sometimes when the glass gets cut out of the mold, you know, there's a little bit of buildup. So remember I was saying I'd keep this screw area here on this fender extension? Well, that pretty much sits here like this. That's how we want our skirt to mount. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna drill. I did try and mark it here, but with this off, I can actually just drill it from the back, and can actually go ahead and use this screw as part of the mock-up. Alright guys, so there we go. We have the skirt just kind of temporarily mounted here, just trying to mock things up. So this is going through the original hole that was holding the fender extension into the fender on the lower side. There's the other screw up here as well. You can see that this skirt wasn't actually cut in the form of the fender, so that'll actually get traced out, and I'll make sure that this gets trimmed nice. You almost want it to look like this guy here. You know, so it just kind of, everything flows and matches and is nice and consistent. So we'll make sure to go ahead and do that over here. Now you can see there's a little bit of a gap in here. That's because the front isn't all the way pushed up yet. And that'll be part of the urethaning and adhesive process that we'll be getting into a little bit later. But overall, gives you a really good idea of how the bumper, the skirt fits up against there. So you can see here, we'll end up having a little bit of massaging to do. But once it's tucked up, and we're gonna wanna get a nice tight line, just like this one, when we're ready to get it painted and finish everything up. So yeah, the GTs are definitely a little bit more involved when it comes to putting a DECH kit on, or any body kit where you want to maintain all of your GT moldings all the way around. So, you know, a lot of cutting, a lot of, you know, maneuvering, removing of some parts and nuts and bolts and brackets for the fender extensions, and that goes for the front as well as the rear. So last but not least, finally gonna mock up this passenger side skirt. That's the last one that needs to get mocked up. So check these out, guys. These are the old GT side skirt mounting brackets. So thankfully the rocker panels on the car are pretty solid, but these brackets are notorious. So that's why when sometimes you see GT side skirts sagging, it's because these have all rotted away, and the clips underneath, maybe sometimes they got ripped out, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna make sure this gets all cleaned up. I'll probably rip some of this off right now, and then we'll get this passenger side skirt mocked up and fitted. So as you can see, I taped off certain areas below the rocker panels here. There was a little bit of corrosion down along the bottom edge of the rocker panel. So you can see down here, that's where all the brackets were riveted on for the GT side skirts. So what I did was I treated them with this POR metal prep, and this converts rust and neutralizes everything, kind of leaves a paintable surface after you're done. And I'm just going to go ahead and then use this rocker guard rubberized undercoating, which should just kind of create a nice layer of protection under there. So here we are. You can see that the finish looks very nice, clean and tidy. And the nice thing about this stuff is it actually matches what's already been sprayed underneath the car. So before the car got here, looks like someone went across and just kind of did the whole underside. So by having the GT side skirts off, because those weren't off when they had sprayed it, gave us access to the lower part of the rockers, so got those all sprayed as well. So now the underside kind of matches everything, so that's good. So again, we'll let this drive for 6 hours.